Hey, what's up, guys? It's DarkArmedDuelist, and today I'm going to be doing a Sky Striker deck profile. So I'm really excited to show you guys this deck because ever since Sky Striker, Mobilize, Engage came off the list, this deck has been doing absolutely amazing, especially going into the grind game. I'm really playing some amazing techs in this deck, so I'm excited to show you guys this deck. So without further ado, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards like getting your name in the description of a single video, getting a signed cards mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month your patron, all along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're playing 3 copies of Sky Striker Ace Ray. This is the main card that you're going to be using in this deck all the time. It is extremely important because you're going to use her to link summon into your copies of all of your Sky Striker extra deck monsters. We then play a single copy of Sky Striker Ace Rose. She's basically here because you have an additional Sky Striker name in this deck with your Sky Striker Ace Rose. We then play a single copy of Destiny Hero Celestial and a single copy of Destiny Hero Dasher. These are basically here so we can go into our copy of Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer because it is a great boss monster in this deck and combos very well into this build. We're then playing 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom basically stops our opponent from touching the deck, and it's a great card in this particular deck. We then play 3 copies of Effect Veiler just to stop our opponent from activating monster effects because we can stop them with this card. And then so we can out boss monsters, we're playing 2 copies of Gamma Seal. This deck has a little bit of trouble when it tries to out boss monsters, so the Gamma Seals help out a lot in this deck to be able to tribute over a copy of Dragoons or tribute over any powerful boss monster like an Ultimate Conductor, Tyranno, or anything like that. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, the heart and soul of this deck, we're going to be playing a single copy of Reinforcements of the Army to search our Sky Striker aces from the deck. We're then playing a single copy of Upstart Goblin because it will actually thin the deck a little bit faster and it gets additional spell cards into the graveyard, which helps out the deck a lot because you're trying to get multiple spells in the grave so you can get those bonus effects of your Sky Striker spells. We're then playing a single copy of Harpy's Feather Duster just to deal with back row that our opponent might be playing against us. And then a single copy of the single best card in the whole deck, a single copy of Sky Striker Mobilize Engage. This card is an amazing card that has the ability that if you control no monsters in your main monster zone, you can add a Sky Striker card from your deck to your hand. Also, accept another copy of itself, and then if you have 3 or more spells in your graveyard, you can draw a card, which is a great effect for this particular card because it gives you a search and it gives you a draw, which is a +1. We then play a single copy of Sky Striker Multi-Roll. Multi-Roll is a really good card because it lets you roll back through your Sky Striker spells by resetting them to your side of the field during the end phase. It can also make your Sky Striker spells speed spell 4s where your opponent cannot respond to them, which is super helpful. We then play a single copy of Sky Striker Hornet Drones. Hornet Drones just gives us a token on our side of the field if we don't control a monster in the main monster zone, and it's a really good card because it does give us that additional token that we can use to link summon other cards in this deck. We play a single copy of Area Zero. I just feel like one Area Zero is fine right now. I have bumped it down in this list for the Gamma Seals, but it's a really good card because it lets you target one other card you control and excavate 3 cards from your deck, and if you do, you can add any Sky Striker card to your hand that you excavated. Shuffle the rest back in the deck, and then if you have this card in the field spell zone, is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon a Sky Striker Ace monster from the deck, which is a pretty good effect just to get us another Sky Striker Ace on the field, but I feel like 1 is totally fine. We then play a single copy of Hercules Base. Hercules Base is a neat one-of in this deck, but I really only feel like you need one because it has the ability to activate this card only if you control no monsters in the main monster zone. And equip this card, the equipped monster cannot attack directly, and it can make a second attack during each battle phase, or can make a second attack on monsters during each battle phase, which is a pretty good effect. And if the equipped monster destroys a monster at battle, and while you have 3 or more spells in the graveyard, you also get to draw a card. And if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target up to 3 Sky Striker cards in the graveyard and shuffle them back in the deck, giving you a little bit of recursion to get your cards back into the deck and roll through some more of your Sky Striker cards to help you go into the grind game. We're then playing a single copy of Eagle Booster. I have thought about bumping Eagle Booster up to 2 in this build because it's just so good at giving you protection, because it has the ability that if you don't have anything in your main monster zone, that target is unaffected by card effects, and you can target any monster to protect it, which is a pretty good effect. And if it also has the ability that if you have 3 or more spells, it can't be destroyed by battle as well, to protect a lot of different monsters that you have. We then play 2 copies of Sky Striker Afterburner. Afterburner has the ability to target a face-up monster on the field and destroy it, but if you have 3 or more spells in the graveyard, you can destroy a spell in the trap as well, which is a pretty good effect to give you a pop too. We play 3 copies of Widow Anchor. Widow Anchor is an insanely good card in this deck, because if you control no monsters in your main monster zone, you can target 1 face-up effect monster on the field, negate that face-up monster's effect on the field until the end phase, and it also has the ability if you have 3 or more cards in your 3 or more spells in the graveyard, then you can actually activate the effect to take control of that monster, which is a pretty good effect to basically grab you any of the monsters that your opponent is playing. It's a super good effect to let you do that, because basically you're going to be able to use that monster as link material, which helps out the deck a lot to be able to get those monsters to link climb into other cards that you want to summon in this deck. I really like this card as a 3 of in the deck because it's just so good. We then play 3 copies of Shark Cannon. Shark Cannon is good as well because if you control no monsters in your main monster zone, you can target a card in your opponent's graveyard and banish it, which is really good because this also is a quick effect, which helps out the deck a lot. And it has the ability that if you have 3 or more spell cards in your graveyard, you can special summon that monster to your field instead, which is a pretty good effect to just basically grab any card that you need out of your opponent's graveyard and basically summon it to your field to use it as link materials. We're then playing 3 copies of Fusion Destiny. This card is a really good card to draw into because it lets us go for our Phoenix Enforcer and get your copies of your Celestial and your copy of your Dasher into the graveyard, so you can use those effects to basically have the ability to, if you draw a card, you get to reveal it. If it's a monster, you can summon it to your side of the field if it's a level 4 monster. And it also has the ability with your Celestial that you can banish it to be able to draw 2 cards if you have no other cards in your hand, which is a pretty good effect with both of those Destiny Hero monsters. They don't come up all that often, but getting them into the graveyard to summon the Phoenix Enforcer is what you're usually doing with this card. So that's it for the spells. Let's get into the traps, because we actually play a couple of traps in this deck. So for the traps, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence, just to have additional stopping power for our monster effects. Now we're going to stop the opponent from activating those monster effects. And then 3 copies of There Can Only Be One, because each player can only control 1 monster of each type, which is totally fine because all of our Sky Striker aces are actually machine monsters in the extra deck, and all of the main deck ones are warrior monsters. So this card comes up quite a lot in this deck to be able to stop the opponent, especially with cards like our Phoenix Enforcer, where it can actually get itself off the field, so you can then summon a copy of your ace monster and then link into a copy of like Kangari, Shizuku, or any of your extra deck monsters. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're obviously going to be playing 3 copies of Kangari. Kangari is the best card in the entire extra deck. Kangari helps out the deck because if this card is special summon, then you can target a Sky Striker spell in the graveyard and add it to your hand, and it gains 100 attack for each spell card in the graveyard, which is a pretty good effect, but you're always going to be then linking it away for a copy of Shizuku. Shizuku is a really neat card as a 3 of, because monsters this card, or monsters your opponent control, lose 100 attack and defense for each spell in the graveyard, and then once per turn during the end phase, if this card was special summoned this turn, you can add a Sky Striker spell from your deck to your hand with a different name from the cards in your graveyard. This card combos very well with our Phoenix Enforcer because it will give our opponent extra, like, losing attack points, which is really good because with Phoenix Enforcer, you're going to usually get 400 points of damage of a reduction on those monsters, but then this adds up because this card will actually reduce them by 100 for each spell card in the graveyard, plus that 400, which actually gets to be a lot of life or a lot of attack points that they're losing. We then play 2 copies of Hayate. I don't feel like I need 3 Hayate. I never go into the 3rd one, but it has the ability that it can attack directly, and after damage calculation into this card battle, you can send a Sky Striker card from your deck to the graveyard, which is pretty good, but doing that 1500 damage is really nice for this deck. You then play a single copy of Kaina. Kaina helps out as a 1-of, but you never really need a second copy of this card. We play a single copy of Zeke, just in case you need to climb into the copy of Zeke. I like this card as a 1-of, but I can never see this card as a 2-of in this deck. We play a single copy of Access Code Talker, because the Access Code Talker gives us additional pops in the deck. We play a single copy of Selene, and you might be wondering, where is the Spellcaster? All of your monsters are warrior monsters, but there's actually a surprise card in this deck that you might not know is a Spellcaster, and it's actually going to be Effect Veiler. Effect Veiler is actually a card that you can use with your copy of your Selene, and it works really well with the spell card. So you can actually link into your copy of Selene using a copy of your Needle Fiber. Needle Fiber comes up a lot in this deck because you can use any two monsters that one's a tuner monster and one's not a tuner monster to link into this card to then special summon an Effect Veiler from the deck to your side of the field. And then once you do, you can link into Selene, and then Selene will get those tokens or the counters on it. You can bring back an Effect Veiler and then climb into access code. So essentially, as long as you can summon your copy of Needle Fiber, you can go into access code in this deck. I then play a single copy of Anaconda, which I did debate cutting for a copy of the Girsu, the World Chalice Warrior, which was an option for me because I felt like I needed an out to like Dragoons and stuff. But I cut it because I felt like the Gamma Seals were enough to deal with it. We then play a single copy of the Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer because this card is an absolute crazy boss monster in this deck because it gives us a pop every single turn during your turn and during your opponent's turn. It doesn't target because of the way it's worded, because it lets us destroy a monster or destroy a card on our field and our opponent's field. So this card comes up all the time in this deck. I love this card in this deck, and it's a really good boss monster to combo with all the other cards. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to play. It's a really amazing like rogue deck right now. It has been topping every so often, but I think as the format goes on, this deck is going to shape up knowing what to actually play to counter certain decks, and it's just a fun deck to play around with. I love the way it plays, being able to go into your Phoenix Enforcer just if you draw that Fusion Destiny, and going in for all sorts of Sky Striker Ace monsters out of the extra deck. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can come part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.